So you're in your kitchen and you see somebody put the kettle on, take out a mug and put a tea bag in it before going to the fridge and taking out a carton of milk. Can someone tell me what they think this person will do next? Hands up if you think you know. Dan.
I think I'll probably pour the milk in their tea after taking the tea bag out.
Yeah, so depending on which way you like to make your tea, you'd think they'd either try to put the milk in first and fail, or put the milk in after taking the tea bag out and make a cup of tea. Now think about this variation on the same situation. Earlier that day, you noticed that the milk had gone off, but you hadn't thrown it away for some reason. Maybe you're just a bad flatmate. What do you think would happen when your friend goes to get the milk out of the fridge this time? Sorry, what was that?
Oh, sorry, Joe. Is the guy who we're trying to talk about the one who knows that the milk's off? Or
No, you know the milk's gone off.
You do know?
You know, but the person making the cup of tea doesn't know.
Are you in the room with them while this is happening?
You're observing the situation, kind of omniscient position.
Sniff the milk before you put it in.
Yeah? And then,
Don't put it in?
hopefully, they wouldn't put the gone off milk in their tea. So this is something which we're all very good at doing. We're very good at predicting and explaining why people do things, why people behave in the way that they do. It's something that in philosophy we call folk psychology or common sense psychology. Increasingly, however, scientific explanations of everyday behaviour are divergent from the kinds of folk psychological reasons we give. So depending on where a psychologist is specialised, they might tell you that you put the milk in your tea because of neural firings, or because of computational algorithms, or because of something you've learned as a child. So how can we make sense of that? One other strange thing is that not only do the explanations they give differ, sometimes the predictions that they will give of your behaviour will differ. So in a classic study, Nisbet and Wilson went into a shopping centre and laid out a display of absolutely identical pairs of tights, and then they asked shoppers to pick which one they preferred. Can anyone tell me what they think they would do in this situation? You're asked to choose from an absolutely identical set of tights.
Pick the pair with the prettiest pair of legs.
How about all the legs right now? Yep.
I might just sort of like count them or do something like that. Choose it by the number of legs that are there, and just choose your favorite number or.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Pick kind of pretty much at random, or based on some other kind of meaningless thing like your favourite number. It turns out that what people actually do is pick from the right-handmost side of the display, or they tend to do this. But then when asked why they picked that pair, they'll say, oh, it had a nicer weave, it was a nicer colour, or something. They'll just make up a reason. And when confronted about this and told that they're exactly the same, they'll deny that this is the case and insist that this pair was nicer. So this is a case where we're very bad at predicting what we would do in this situation or what other people might do. And science seems better at predicting this. So in another study, Solomon Ash asked subjects, like all of you, to pick which of these lines on the right here matches this one on the left. Can anyone tell me which one matches? A, yeah, easy task. Now, this was the situation. There were 8 people in the room. 7 of them were working with the experimenter and had been told to pick the wrong answer. So 7 of them who aren't you, picked C, for instance. Which do you think you would do? What would you do in this situation? The 7 people in the room with you have just picked C.
Pick C.
Pick C. Okay. Anyone more confident of their own line judging abilities? Well, yeah. So lots of people would think they'd obviously pick A because it's quite clearly the right answer. But as you've said, maybe you just give into the pressure in this situation and pick C, which is what lots of people do. But people don't like to think of themselves as being like this normally, and wouldn't predict that this is what they do. Wouldn't predict that other people would do this. So again, it seems that we're quite bad at predicting our behaviour in these kinds of situations. How can we reconcile this with our otherwise very good ability to predict everyday behaviours, like putting milk into tea? one thing to note is that in this situation, and this one here, the subjects were put in very unusual situations which they wouldn't normally find themselves in. So maybe what we do is structure our environments in such a way that nothing too unusual happens, to make prediction much easier. We can also go about intentionally structuring our kind of environment in this way with social norms. So there's normal ways of behaving which we expect people to do. And to some extent, these are even enforced by the predictions we make. So by predicting every day that when somebody goes to the fridge and takes the milk out, they put it in their tea, you actually make it more likely that that's what you'll do, because you want to live up to your own expectations, if that makes sense. So some people think that one of the roles of folk psychology is actually to make it easier to predict future behaviour by limiting the space of possible things which we might do. Still, it seems a bit worrying that we can be so easily tricked into doing silly things like picking the wrong line when one's obviously the right size. But you should take consolation in the fact that while scientists are very good at explaining the mechanisms behind these kinds of strange choices, they're not very good at predicting behaviour in complex real-world situations. If you ask scientists to use a brain scanner to work out what somebody's going to do when they open the fridge, they almost certainly won't be able to tell you, because it isn't how our understanding of the brain currently works. So perhaps we can think of folk psychology and scientific psychology as giving different kinds of explanations of how behaviour works. So what science can do, perhaps, is explain how the cogs in our brain or in our body works and how our behaviour comes about in a kind of mechanistic sense. But what folk psychology can do is actually predict complex real-world behaviour and explain complex interactions, and also structure our environments in such a way as to make prediction easier in the future. So my research aims to make sense of the differences between these two kinds of ways of explaining behaviour, and to examine situations when folk psychological explanation might be bad for scientific studies, and vice versa, when our scientific ways of explaining might impact folk psychological explanation. Thank you.